Hello and welcome to this Wednesday's morning market briefing. We've got lots to talk about, but firstly, Jordan does warn that the Middle East is at the edge of an abyss, as well as that Donald Trump ally Jim Jordan does fail and not win the vote to become the Speaker of the House of Representatives in the US, of course. And obviously, this is a kind of loss for Trump, who was his ally. But we've got lots to talk about also on the charts and lots happening on the economic calendar, but we'll come to that near the end. But make sure to subscribe as we get straight into it. So the first to talk about, of course, is Jordan, which does warn that the Middle East is at the edge of the abyss. Now, Jordan did warn that, and this comes as the death toll does increase in the Israel-Hamas war, and diplomatic activity does intensify in an act to prevent the conflict from spiraling into a larger regional one. And this comes ahead of his summit with Joe Biden in Amman today, which will take place today, with the King of Jordan calling for humanitarian assistance to the Gaza Strip, whilst refusing to take in Palestinian refugees. And this is kind of the same sort of rhetoric that we are hearing from many Arab states, as well as Egypt, which of course does border Gaza. Now, both of these states are calling for that increased humanitarian aid, as many citizens within their own nations continue to rally for support for Gaza, as they kind of have this sympathy for the Arab Muslims in that area. And they are calling for that support. However, of course, many of these nations still don't want to take on the burden of taking in, 2 million, refugees, which is how many people do live in Gaza. Because, of course, if you then do take in, over 2 million individuals, especially those that are displaced from a regional conflict, and you're still keeping them in the same sort of area, you also not only risk, damages to your infrastructure, because, you're overloading the demand, but also, you risk domestic terrorism, which is one of the reasons why Egypt is saying no to the refugees, apart from those which do hold an Egyptian passport as well. Now, with the king also telling the press that whilst he was in Berlin and this came as he was speaking with Olaf Scholz in Berlin, the whole region is on the brink of falling into an abyss. So, really worrying rhetoric there, really, kind of setting the tone for a possible escalation in the conflict and what might come of that escalation, that being a collapse of the Middle East once again. Also saying the threat that this conflict spreads is real. The costs are too high for everyone. So really trying to reiterate that, these effects of the conflict cannot spread beyond Israel and Gaza's borders, because if it does spread, the costs will mount to be too high. And this is what we've been talking about a lot recently with, Iran provoking its, Hezbollah militants in Lebanon to attack kind of Israeli infrastructure and Israeli military targets, and the kind of conflicts which have been taking place as a result on that border, which obviously has risked further escalation with, Israel, between, Syria, Lebanon, and of course Iran itself, with jets flying into those two territories specifically, those being Syria and Lebanon, as this is where Shiite militias are based and firing rockets into Israel. Now this is all in light, of course, of Israel's bombing of Gaza on Tuesday, where 200 people are believed to have been killed according to the Hamas-run health ministry. And this is of course following another airstrike on targets within Gaza, which often conflate with civilian infrastructure, where often Hamas has built their military infrastructure into civilian infrastructure, such as tunnels going underneath buildings, and then tunnels which then lead up into these main civilian hubs as a way to kind of prevent Israel from attacking, because obviously the optics of that attack will look bad. But now, Hamas has committed such a massacre in Israeli proper. Israel is basically saying, we don't care anymore. You've done this to our citizens. If there's a military target in that building, we don't care. We're sending our missiles over there, basically. Now, Israel also once again accused Iran of escalating the situation on the Lebanon border, because as we know, Hezbollah is operating there under, the kind of wing of Iranian paramilitaries, with Israel saying it would hold the sovereign state of Lebanon responsible, as this is where, Hezbollah militants are being harboured. Now, Scholz, Olaf Scholz, the German chancellor, also said he was talking to the leaders of both Israel and Egypt about aid to Gaza, and this came at the same time that all of this did come at the same time of the US deploying a second aircraft carrier strike group to the eastern Mediterranean, as well as putting 2,000 troops on a prepare to deploy order. So significant developments obviously taking place within this conflict, with the US really preparing a response force in case escalations do take place in these territories, where the US might have to evacuate embassies, or get out US personnel which may be there as dual passport, dual citizenship, or just those maybe being tourists. And so this is kind of what they're preparing for. Now, Israel had agreed to humanitarian aid to Gaza, however, only on the condition it goes to areas south of the enclave ordered to evacuate, with Biden arriving, today into Israel to help influence matters on, making sure that aid does go to certain areas of the Gaza Strip, and that they're able to get out US nationals from Gaza. And in relation to what this kind of area is that they're talking about this southern enclave. They'll only send aid to this area and not to this northern enclave, which they've ordered all those in this area to move south. Obviously, many people do live in that northern enclave, but this is expected to be the area in which Israel will invade to kind of take out the Hamas militants and clear the Gaza Strip of Hamas. Now, the US also estimates that 500 to 600 of its nationals are trapped in the enclave, and this is what we're talking about with the US, deploying 2,000 people on the aircraft carriers and in surrounding areas, prepared to enter if needs be to get out those nationals. And despite efforts, the Rafah crossing on the Egyptian-Israeli border is still closed, and this is kind of the issue currently with Egypt, is still that area is closed off to those that might want to migrate south and into Egypt, get away from the conflict. That isn't an option at the moment, and people are kind of stuck in Gaza, where obviously there's lots of airstrikes as a result of Israel targeting that Hamas military infrastructure. Now, with there being a red line for Jordan and Egypt on refugees, and this is what we've spoken about, and in total 300 people in Gaza are said to be dead, and of course the 1,400 dead in Israel, which were sadly massacred on the 7th of October by Hamas militants. Now, that's all to talk about in that article. Next to talk about, of course, is Donald Trump and his ally Jim Jordan, who did run and is running still somewhat for the Speaker of the House. Now, Jim Jordan lost his vote to become the Speaker of the House of Representatives yesterday, and this comes after 20 members of his own party voted against him, and he is a Trump loyalist. This is why many members of the Republican House do support him in a very strong way, and these are his supporters are generally those which more so supported the ousting of Kevin McCarthy. So generally these Republican rebels, which are more hardline and more pro-Trump, and therefore that's what he was really tailoring to. And this is in contrast to Scalise, which we spoke about last week, who essentially was running on a more moderate campaign. However, because he was running on a moderate campaign, he still had those hardline Republicans against him, and he wasn't able to convert those Democrats that he might need to become the House leader. Now, Jordan did not comment on the matter of his loss, saying he was willing to Jordan did comment on the matter of his loss, saying he was willing to pursue multiple votes in order to be elected. However, he hasn't yet pushed ahead for the second ballot. So we are still waiting on that message to come through on whether he is going for the second ballot. Due to Republicans holding a razor-thin majority in the House, Jordan will need to win over 16 fellow Republicans if he is to secure his leadership. And this is what we talked about last week as well with Scalise, is whatever kind of Republican message that you do run on, you will have to kind of make your way over to the other side of the Republican lines, where they may be more moderates or more hard lines, depending on who you are within the party, and you may very much have to win over those individuals so that you're able to bring them over to your side and get them to vote for you, essentially. As a result of not having a speaker in the House, as we've said before, they cannot decide on the matters of increasing funding for Ukraine and Israel, as well as the federal budget funding in November, because we do know that although that temporary budget was passed, which did push back the chances of a government shutdown to mid-November, we are still waiting on having a House Speaker to help push through a budget during that time, because if nothing is agreed upon at that time, obviously a government shutdown will occur, meaning many people within federal departments are furloughed and sent home because there isn't the funding to pay them, and this would be obviously very detrimental to the US economy, as well as US foreign policy as well, because they're not able to formulate policy and enact it, essentially. 6 of the voters against Jordan made protest votes for the ousted McCarthy, because of course he was ousted by those hardline Republicans, which likely would support Jim Jordan. And Trump once again endorsed Jordan, saying he was a fantastic young man, and also saying he really represented the values of the American people. Also saying, I think he's going to have the vote soon, if not today, over the next day or two, and I think he'll end up being a great speaker. So Trump really setting his alliances in the sand, drawing that line, saying that he is supporting the more hardline Jim Jordan, which is to be expected as he is more aligned with Trump's rhetoric. And of course this all comes after McCarthy's ousting, after those 8 hardline Trumpists did vote for him to be ousted, and since then there's been no consensus on a successor. However, despite all of this, Jordan is still the most likely, with the more supporters than Scalise. But that said, Scalise does have the more moderate position, so maybe he's able to win over some Democrats for his side, but we will see. But that's all to talk about the articles, really. Next to talk about, of course, is the charts, where we've got lots to talk about on there. So firstly, to talk about is US indices, which have recently consolidated. So this all comes following this kind of large gap did take place after Hamas did invade Israel, and then the response from Israel about that, the kind of heightened border and world tensions around that caused that drop in price. And from that area, we've kind of slowly pushed quite significantly to the upside, pushing into this level of liquidity. From there, we did see a sell-off kind of coming down, and seemingly we have consolidated around this area with, yesterday's gains taking it above its prior highs, of course. And then, that was on Monday, Monday's push to the upside did take it above and almost into this area of liquidity, so above those prior recent highs, and since then we've kind of sold off a tiny bit, wicked into there again, so really a consolidation on US indices, and this is something that we've seen across the US 30, so the Dow Jones, and also on the US 100, so the Nasdaq, where seemingly we haven't really moved since Friday the 13th on October, where it really just kind of ranged about and has consolidated from there. So it'll be interesting to see how these equities might shape up, and how and where US equities may go with coming economic data from the US, as well as the kind of, shaping up geopolitical tensions within Gaza and Israel, and how that might then affect US indices as a result of possibly even the US getting involved. So definitely keep your eyes on US indices. Next to talk about, of course, though, is the dollar, which, since yesterday really wicked down into this area of liquidity on the support side. And this was an area that we highlighted because we did see, this kind of shoulders and head and shoulders pattern, forming on the dollar, which kind of signaled to us on the more technical analysis side that possibly we were in for a reversal on the dollar's bullish trends, and we kind of saw that through the RSI presenting a bearish divergence. And so we were kind of talking about how maybe this is time on the the more technical analysis time, maybe we should be expecting a bearish downturn. However, we did highlight some possible areas of supporting liquidity where maybe price grabs that liquidity and moves again to the upside, possibly breaking above these prior highs in the future, because of course this is all based on where does monetary policy go for the USA, as well as where does the kind of tensions within Israel and Gaza go from where they are, because obviously if tensions do ramp up, there's a chance in fact that the dollar does respond positively, as many do often see the dollar as that safe haven currency, and so they may go for that. However, if the US then gets involved in the conflict, then we may actually see that sell off in the dollar, as we then expect more kind of inflationary spending by the US government, which can only push up prices. So now we've wicked into this area of liquidity. It'll be interesting to see whether we can make a move to the upside, or in fact it will continue to the downside, and this is just kind of a random wick to the downside. So definitely keep your eyes on that. But next to talk about, of course, is Euro USD, which in line with the dollar, of course, did wick up today into the 61.8% Fibonacci mark, therefore kind of presenting a more bearish image. That said, we are kind of similar on the dollar. We are kind of seeing that reversal pattern of almost an inverse head and shoulders pattern forming, so it'll be interesting to see whether that actually does play out, or in fact we are now ready to head back down after tapping that 61.8% Fibonacci mark, giving us the liquidity to once again move to the downside. So definitely keep your eyes on Euro USD, as we certainly do have a chance now that we've gained that liquidity. Now we do have that chance of a reversal to the downside and a continuation of this bearish trend, because after all, we did move into this area of resistance, and the liquidity provided enough sell orders to move to the downside. So definitely keep your eyes on Euro USD. But next to talk about, of course, is USD JPY, which presented some really interesting price action today after it experienced extremely high levels of volatility, with USD JPY spiking and wicking into the 61.8% Fibonacci mark, which we'd highlighted yesterday or the day before, I can't remember, but yeah, this was an area that we highlighted, not only for its level of it being a 61.8% Fibonacci mark, but we knew there would be a high level of bullish orders in there, buys to the upside, due to the kind of levels of accumulation that we've previously seen in those areas. So it was an area to highlight, to possibly see a move to the upside from that area. And from today, from yesterday, we have seen exactly that, with USD JPY spiking to the downside, and now potentially ready to move to the upside after gaining that liquidity. So definitely keep your eyes on USD JPY. After all, we did say it did form that bullish flag, it did break above it, and we were expecting the retest, and this is kind of the retest that we've now seen. So we should be expecting a move to the upside, and we're forming that cup and handle kind of price action pattern. So definitely keep your eyes on USD JPY. But next to talk about is gold, which we spoke about recently a lot due to the fact that it's had such a an impact on the price of gold as a result of the Gaza Israel conflict. As we can see here, since the start of the conflict, obviously on the 7th of October, we saw gold's price spike, to great levels, going from 1827 to 1927, to 1932 even. So significant moves to the upside on gold. And from there, we were kind of saying that if, geopolitical tensions continue to shape up in a way that's bullish for gold, so continue to show that escalation is likely, then we are likely to see a move further to the upside in the long term. But therefore we need to gain a kind of opportunity maybe on a retracement, and so we did highlight this 38.2% Fibonacci mark, which it kind of did come really near and kind of peek into this area of liquidity as well that we'd highlighted, but also we highlighted that 50% Fibonacci mark as well, which we did say there was a possibility of gold moving to the downside, maybe on a macroeconomic move before moving higher following a kind of geopolitical move. So definitely keep your eyes on gold as it shapes up to be in a really interesting position with all these geopolitical tensions rising, of course. But next to talk about, and finally to talk about on the charts, is oil, where yesterday, we did see that move to the downside, that retracement from this area of resistance that we had highlighted as a key issue for oil to break higher from, and it did kind of move down from that area, tapping that 38.2% Fibonacci mark, coming near that 50% Fibonacci mark where there was some strong areas of liquidity, and it had moved higher from that area. And now we would be expecting that break above this area of resistance. Now it has gained that level of liquidity, so definitely keep your eyes on that as we look to see how it shapes up on Brent crude oil, which has been in a very interesting position lately. So let's see if it can move higher than 912. But that's all to talk about for the charts. Lastly to talk about, of course, is the economic calendar, where we have lots of data coming out today. So firstly, with Chinese GDP growth rate. So obviously that's very important as China's economy has been in a really interesting position recently, with kind of the declines to what we would usually expect from China. As well as that, we've got Chinese retail sales coming out and unemployment rate. So more data around China's economic status. So definitely keep your eyes on that as it is a hot topic at the moment. As well as that, we've got UK core inflation rate. Of course, that's very important in relation to the pound, because obviously it shapes monetary policy for the Bank of England. As well as that, we've got ECB inflation rate and ECB President Lagarde's speech. So clearly some very important inflation data coming out today in Europe, with Britain's inflation rate coming out, as well as the Euro's inflation rate coming out. So definitely keep your eyes on that. And as well as that, we've got the 10-year bond auction for Germany, as well as lots of US data. So we've got the building permits for the US, as well as mortgage rates and mortgage applications data coming out. And then finally, we've got lots of Fed officials having their speeches today, so definitely tune in to hear more about the US's monetary policy. But that's all from us today here at Wildwood Capital. There was lots to talk about. I think we've covered a lot. Hope you have a great trading day this Wednesday. Have a great one. See you later. Bye.